Last month, at the end of August, several big tournaments went down all across the world, drawing in the eyes of the Smash community. It's been an insanely busy past few weeks, but for the most part, fairly standard. Shuton and Raru farming some Japanese tournaments, MKLeo tearing it up in the States, and Gluttony making a return to prominence in the UK. Very exciting stuff, but you know, nothing earth-shattering. That is, however, until we look a little closer. While the fan favorites tear it up in grand finals, what you might not know is that several low-tier characters made insane runs at these tournaments, making history and redefining their characters' metas. These runs are definitely the most notable things to happen in this tail end of August, and today we'll be going over all three of these low-tier heroes, covering their runs in chronological order and seeing how they managed the impossible. These three heroes, in the order we're covering them, are Tarakotori's Little Mac, Tass's Piranha Plant, and Mezcal's Ridley. Without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into it, starting with Tarakotori. On August 21st, weekly Smash Party Sumappa 151 went down in Japan. This weekly series, which I'll just call Sumappa for short, is one of Japan's biggest and longest running tournaments. And at this specific edition, the best Little Mac in the world, Tarakotori, made a mind-blowing run. But unlike the other two runs we're covering today, I actually have to start this segment off with a disclaimer. You see, you've probably seen a few other Smash channels cover this run already. Little Mac tends to pull in a lot of views, so it's understandable. But in the excitement and the hype, I think we've all been a tad carried away in overestimating the importance of this run. Now, don't get me wrong, is this run impressive? Oh yeah, it is. But the key here is that this run took place at a local, just a weekly. This is a key detail that a lot of the videos about this run seem to just kinda gloss over, and I've even seen some YouTube commenters saying that Little Mac won a major, which is definitely not true. So let me be clear. This tournament does not count for the rankings, by which I mean Lumirank. So Tarakotori's good placement and stellar wins aren't going to affect Lumirank whatsoever. And losses to Tarakotori won't affect any of the players he beat, because locals never count for rankings for very good reason. I don't want to waste time in this video going over why locals don't count for rankings, but if there's enough confusion about it, I might make a comment about it on my account and get it pinned. So if you're confused, check down in the comments and look for an explanation, or request one if there isn't one pinned. But just because this tournament doesn't count for rankings doesn't mean that it doesn't matter. And on that note, let's finally get into Tarakotori's run at Sumappa 151. Tarakotori entered into the tournament as the 13th seed, but seeding at this local actually works quite differently than any US tournament. At Sumappa, seeding is almost entirely dictated by the results of the week prior. For example, the first seed at this tournament was Umeki, because he had won the previous Sumappa. So he was the 1 seed, even though there were higher ranked players in attendance. Tarakotori had placed 13th at that tournament, and thus came into this week's edition as the 13th seed. Starting off the tournament, Tarakotori went Game 3 against Hiramyi, who I believe plays Kazuya, but clutched it out in the end to move on in bracket. Oh, and by the way, this entire tournament is best of 3. Just FYI. The next set would be versus Uwame, the best solo Olimar main in Japan, and it was the first set of this run to be put on stream. Tarakotori started off hot, but a good Game 2 from Uwame meant that we were headed into a decisive Game 3 yet again. But Tarakotori had adapted well, and ended off this game with a stock to spare, defeating Uwame 2-1 to move into winners quarterfinals against Rimu. And if you recognize that name at all, you're probably hearing alarm bells right about now. You see, Rimu means Min Min. When you think of Japanese Min Mins, most players are likely only familiar with Doramigi and maybe Omawatsu. But this country's actually got a lot of talented Min Min players, with Rimu joining the likes of Mao and Malk to round out the top 5 Japanese Min Mins. This matchup is considered by many to be borderline unwinnable, but interestingly enough, Little Mac mains don't typically put it as an unwinnable matchup, with the likes of Pac-Man, Pikachu, and Samus being seen as worse. Regardless on how bad it is exactly, one thing we can all agree on is that it's definitely not a good sign for Tarakotori. But as the set progressed, something insane happened. Tarakotori actually started doing really well. He was edgeguarding Min Min as Little Mac using aerials. You heard that right, Mac became an air fighter. And funny thing about this matchup, if you get in Minmin's face and don't let her breathe, you're probably gonna win, no matter who you're playing as. And that's exactly what Tarori did, winning the set 2-0 and advancing into winner's side top 8. Here, Tarori had to fight Kamisake, the second best hero main in Japan, who had just beaten first seed Umeki to make it here. And at first, it seemed as if this is where Tarori's winner's run would end, as Kamisake took the first game of the set. But activating the clutch gene, Tarori won the next 2 in a row, defeating Kamisake 2-1 and moving into winners finals as the 13th seed and as Little Mac. Here, Tarori would face a challenge like none before, fighting a top 10 player in the world in the form of Shuton. Now, Shuton opted to go Aegis this set. Many people will say that he would have been better off with Olimar, but many others will retort that perhaps witnessing Uame lose earlier dissuaded him from going the same character. But no matter the cause, the result was that Shuton went strictly Aegis in this set, a choice that may have come back to haunt him. Because not only did Tarori beat Shuton, he did it 2-0, not even dropping a game to the only top 10 player in attendance. Tarori moved into grand finals from winner's side, an extraordinary feat. And while you may have expected Shuton to be the one making it back into grands from losers, you'd actually be mistaken. It was Ken, second best Sonic in the world, who made it there instead. And the first set of grands went exactly how you'd imagine this matchup should go. A top 2 character versus a defined low tier. You couldn't get further opposites on the tier list if you tried. And Ken defeated Tarori 2-0, sweeping him to force a grand finals reset. And even though Tarori won the first game of this reset, Ken quickly answered back to win game 2, bringing us to a final decisive game to see which player would win Sumappa 151. And let me tell you, if Ken had won this game, we probably wouldn't be talking about this run at all, which must mean... That's right, Tarori won this game, winning the grand finals reset 2-1 and becoming your winner of Sumappa 151 as the 13th seed. And let's be real for a second. This tournament might not count for rankings, but this run was extremely good, and these wins were some of Tarori's best, regardless if Lumi rank reflects that or not. Our next tournament doesn't even require us to move very far, as it's yet another Japanese tournament. These 2 tourneys are both majors and happened at nearly the same time. But hey, we're in Japan anyways, why leave, right? Which leads us to Sumobatsu SP50 and TAS, the Piranha Plant. TAS has been known as a hidden boss in Japan, being primarily known as the best plant in the country. He's made a few big upsets before, defeating players like Gact at majors, but he's never gone on a massive run. That is, until August 24th at Sumobatsu SP50. TAS came into this major as the 37th seed, and in a tourney with 384 entrants, that's pretty good. In pools, TAS started off by defeating Temple, a hero main 2-0, as well as Celestia, a Lucas main 2-1, nearly being upset early on. After this, TAS moved into the top 96 qualifier against the best Zelda in the world, Wine, and proceeded to lose 2-0. That's right, TAS lost in pools, being forced to enter top 96 through loser's side, a daunting loser's run ahead of him. TAS started it by defeating Meiki, who I believe mains Olimar, as well as Tukune, both in 3-1 victories, before starting to get some really solid wins, defeating Dio, a Greninja main named Nako, and Iba, all in 3-0 wins. It was at this point that TAS finally got put on stream against one of the highest seeded players at this tournament, Ashimo. Ashimo had also lost in pools to Sumu Suto, and had been slogging his way through losers, now meeting up against TAS. Anyone would expect this set to be the end of TAS's run. But here's the thing, not only did TAS win this set against Ashimo, but it wasn't even close. TAS absolutely swept Ashimo, 3-stocking him in game 3 to win the set 3-0, knocking Ashimo out of bracket and moving into the loser's side top 8 qualifier. Here, TAS would have to fight Lax, known as Japan's best Chrom, who recently has been training a secondary Sora. And it was this Sora that Lax primarily used to take this set to a crucial game 5. But TAS managed to clutch it up, defeating Lax 3-2 and moving into loser's side top 8. That's right, dear viewers, Piranha Plant made top 8 at a major for the second time ever. If you're surprised to hear second time ever, that's actually because this has been done before, with Brood making top 8 at Umebura SP4. Let's see, when was that tournament again? Oh, right, it was 5 years ago. Now sadly, despite this massive triumph of making top 8, TAS would be matched up against Meister in losers 8s, Oh yeah, by the way, Meister jump scare. He was in Japan for this tournament and is still over there at the time this script is being written. Expect a video about it eventually. Either way, even though Tass was able to take a game, he wasn't able to take the set, losing to Meister 3-1 to be eliminated at 7th place as the 37th seed, making history in the process. Now we move on to the last story of today's video, and to see it, we'll have to go beyond the sea to the United Kingdom for Regen 2024. Unlike the other two tournaments, which were both Japanese and both ran in the span of only one day, Regen was a 3-day event, starting on the 23rd of August and ending on the 25th. So yeah, Sumobatsu SP50 happened smack dab in the middle of this tournament. But top 8 took place on the 25th after it was over, so that's why Regen goes last. Either way, let's see the story of Mezcal, the Ridley. As a side note, yes, I'm aware that most people don't consider Ridley to be a low tier, and even the most recent official tier list has him in C-. But listen, the phrase 3 low tiers rolls off the tongue a lot better than 2 low tiers and a low mid tier. You feel me? Anyways, Mezcal has long been known as the best Ridley in Europe and debatably the best in the world. Smub certainly gives Mezcal good competition, and personally I see it as a sort of peaks versus consistency debate, but regardless, Mezcal is undeniably a top 2 Ridley worldwide. Regen 2024, the UK's first major since Albion 4, brought in talent from all across the EU, as well as a few invaders from North America, most notably from Mexico in the form of MKLeo and MK Big Boss. Unlike our other two stories, Mezcal was actually seeded fairly high, coming into this 571 entrant tournament as the 11th seed. Mezcal started off the tournament by getting through pools fairly easily, defeating Not Lewis 3-0, Cloudmain Imzon 3-0, and lastly, Inkling Main Solid Gamer 3-1, to make it into top 128 through winner's side with only one game dropped. In top 128, you only needed to win one set to make top 64, which Mezcal did by defeating Duck Hunt main SV in a close game 5 set. Once in top 64, Mezcal had yet another close call game 5 against Yusuf the Mario main, and yet again clutched it out. But Mezcal's next opponent was Shanique, an Inkling main who was one of the big breakout stars from this tournament, having just defeated Siski the set prior. And unfortunately for our hero, Mezcal lost to Shanique 3-1, dropping into losers before top 16. Once in losers, Mezcal won just one more set against Kerbo 3-0 to enter top 16, needing 2 more set wins to make top 8. The first of these sets was against Pharaoh, the American Yoshi main who had been going on quite the loser's run of his own. This set went down to a crucial game 5, like many of Mezcal's sets. But unlike the ones before, something clicked in the critical last game, and Mezcal absolutely demolished Pharaoh, winning the set 3-2 and moving into the loser's side top 8 qualifier. This final set would be a clean 3-0 victory against Lugi, a set where Mezcal expertly showcased Ridley's insane edgeguarding ability against Luigi's vulnerable recovery, making top 8 from loser's side. As far as I know, this is the first time in Smash Ultimate history that Ridley has made top 8 at a major tournament. And once here, Mezcal would have to go up against Tarek, the best player in Germany. As this set got underway, Mezcal would take an early 2-0 lead against Tarek, looking primed and ready to defeat the German Greninja and continue on into the rest of the bracket. But, about that, yeah. Unfortunately for our hero, Tarek's clutch gene was too strong, and Mezcal got reverse 3-0'd, being eliminated at 7th place as the 11th seed. Interestingly enough, looking at strictly seeding, this run was the least impressive of the 3 we've covered, as Mezcal only outplaced his seed by a few rounds. But in terms of overarching Smash history, it was the most important run in this video, as Plant has made top 8 at a major once before, just like Tass did at Sumobatsu SP50, and Tarori has certainly won locals before, even winning the Battle of B6 pre-local over insanely good players, just like he did at Sumappa 151. But Ridley doesn't have another major top 8 to his name, with Mezcal redefining his character's meta and potential single-handedly. And so, that wraps up our 3 tales that took place in the last few days of August. If you play a character that's not seen as high tier, or even mid tier for that matter, don't give up. Ultimate has more viable characters at a top level than any other Smash game, and low-key, maybe any other fighting game, period. And if these players can do it with their low tiers, you can break even with Palutena, or Roy, or Cloud, or Wolf, or Lucina, or wow, there are a lot of down players out there, huh? Either way, I promise you can do it. That's going to be it for today's video. Until next time, I've been Mr. Mice, and thank you all so very much for watching.